Welcome to Emotions and Eating with Nicola Beer. Nicola controlled her feelings using food for 25 years, so she knows how draining it is to be constantly thinking about or acting out with food. Thankfully, having made an amazing breakthrough in her recovery, her mission became about helping others escape the unsatisfying cycle of frustration and self-medication with food. Nicola is determined to help you find your inner strength so you can be healthy, gain confidence, feel great, and be at peace with yourself and food.
Hi and welcome, so happy you're here. I'm going to be talking today about a lack of empathy, how to handle no empathy in a relationship as well. When a person lacks empathy, they are unable to put themselves in another person's shoes. They aren't able or willing to see things from a different perspective, and usually find it difficult to put their views, wants and needs aside to take on board someone else's feelings. As a relationship counsellor, life coach, hypnotherapist, I have clients who come to me because their partner's lack of empathy is negatively impacting their relationship. I also have someone come to me because they want to change that about themselves, because they're harsh on themselves or they're harsh towards their partner and they don't want to be like that anymore. In order to have empathy, a person needs to be considerate of other people's feelings, have patience when discussing difficult topics with others, and listen actively to come to a mutual agreement rather than dismissing or ignoring the other's needs. Having empathy allows us to really connect with others on a deeper level. It shows you care when you're able to listen, support and understand someone struggling. Empathy for others also encourages us to expand our love for ourselves and to be kind to our mind and body. When men and women come to work with me on their lack of empathy, I often notice a pattern of being highly critical towards themselves. Often they were not given empathy as a child and are strict with themselves. For example, when they are sick, they will tell themselves to get on with it, even be harsh and critical towards themselves, rather than gentle and reassuring. I used to be like that myself actually, so I know how difficult it could be to give yourself empathy. I've always been able to give empathy to others, but to myself I would push and push and push myself, sometimes until I collapsed. And then I would criticize myself for not doing my best or for wasting time when I was unwell. I took it so far that I sometimes would make myself run even if my feet were hurting, my legs were aching. I would just be like, no, you have to run, you have to do this. And I was pretty hard on myself. And until I did my 3-day intensive breakthrough session 12 years ago, which completely changed my life, and that's why I love doing the breakthrough sessions with others, I didn't know how to stop that voice in my head. I didn't know how to stop pushing myself. I didn't know what empathy for yourself meant. So whilst this podcast is focused on a lack of empathy towards others, it's important to change a lack of empathy towards yourself, as constantly judging yourself, comparing yourself to others, analysing your body and where you are in life, telling yourself you're not good enough, you're not doing this well, you're not doing that, you should do this, you should do that, will make you miserable. I lived like that until I was 28 years old. And so when I completely did that breakthrough, it changed everything for me. And I really hope that you are able to break free from that pattern if it's happening to you, and have that love and compassion towards yourself. And reach out if you want to know more about my intensive breakthrough sessions. You can book a 20-minute call on my website. You can also email me for information, and I can email you the information and then we can book a call if you want to learn more. So now I'm going to share about lack of empathy in a relationship. Empathy is so important when it comes to romantic relationships. As a relationship counsellor, my experience has shown that in order to have a successful and thriving relationship, both partners really do need to show empathy to one another, because it helps people to feel that they can be vulnerable, they can be honest, and this builds intimacy and closeness. When someone shows empathy, it also feels like they have your back. And a lot of the reasons that sometimes couples come to me when their marriage is in crisis is because they don't feel that their partner has their back. There are many possible issues that can come up between a couple when one partner lacks empathy. For example, conflicts and arguments can escalate quickly because there is little consideration or no consideration for the other person's feelings. Often it can break down the connection with one another on a deeper level because a person who lacks empathy may make it difficult for their partner to be open, to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be truthful, which creates distance between the couple, and they may then shut down. They may avoid sharing their feelings. They may go to their friends, to their work colleagues, to their family for the emotional support, and they may shut the other person in their relationship out. Also, if a person lacks empathy and showing empathy, they may avoid conversations, they may get frustrated when things are brought up. There's also less compassion and more judgment if there's a lack of empathy, and compassion and acceptance is also key in a relationship. The person who lacks empathy also may feel alone, and the person misunderstood because maybe they don't know how to share and show empathy, and the other person may also feel alone. So it can leave both people in the relationship feeling isolated, lonely, misunderstood. Often when I work with a couple where one person is unable to show empathy for a variety of different reasons, the other person can feel like they're doing everything in the relationship, that the relationship is really one-sided, that they're sharing, they're supporting, they're giving, they're fighting, they're having their partner's back, and by fighting I mean they're fighting their partner's corner, and they can feel very down when they're not having that reciprocated. And lastly, a lack of empathy can create issues when it comes to how to bring up children. Sometimes the lack of empathy can translate to all areas of a person's life, all of their relationships, and they may disagree on parenting, where one person believes in that tough love, don't cry, don't be sad kind of approach, and the other person parents by talking through emotions, accepting their children's feeling, and allowing their children to express their feelings, which is very healthy. So earlier I touched on the inner critic, which I help people release through my breakthrough sessions if there is that lack of empathy towards yourself, because like I mentioned, it will affect every area of your life, and most people that are constantly criticizing themselves will be unhappy. However, there are other reasons why people struggle to show empathy, and I think it's very important, since we're talking about empathy, to have empathy for people that may struggle to show empathy. So these are the other reasons that people can have a lack of empathy. One, they haven't had positive experience of sharing emotions. They haven't had good examples, role models, experience in being open in relationships and having compassion towards others. Sometimes people have learned that hiding themselves makes them more lovable, and they adopt that people pleaser trait where they hide their true feelings, hide themselves, they just say whatever anybody wants to hear. And again, I work with a lot of people that say, I don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. And actually often when people go through that so-called midlife crisis, which can happen at any point in life, is often when people have been a people pleaser and then they decide, who am I? I don't know if I want to be like this anymore. Why have I been doing everything that society and culture tells me to do? Why have I been following what my parents have wanted me to do, my husband or wife has wanted me to do? what about what I want to do? And then they go through this process of deciding, I don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. And then often they reject everything. They can sometimes reject their relationship, they can sometimes reject their family, they can sometimes reject their job, they can sometimes reject their religion, the culture, because they're trying to find themselves. And they find the easiest way to find themselves is to actually analyse everything, critique everything that they've been doing and change. And sometimes the changes support them and sometimes the changes don't support them. And soon they often bring themselves out of it. Sometimes they can slip into that depression and loneliness, which is important to work on that if that is you. So anyway, people pleasing. Then there are parents, as I was talking about earlier, that have that approach of tough love. And that tough love approach to parenting can make some people believe that love is being strict, is being harsh. This is how you show love. You show love by being tough. Others may have adopted a belief that being kind and showing compassion doesn't really help people. It's better to be strict. It's better to be challenging. It's better to motivate by fear, that stick approach, rather than benefits and incentives. Sometimes people learn this from the workplace. If you're in your first couple of jobs, you are treated with no empathy. When you're sick, you're told, get on with it. I used to work in quite a strict recruitment sales culture when I first started my career. And you were only as good as your last month. You were constantly criticised. You constantly had new targets thrown at you. And even if you hit them, you had new ones to hit, or you weren't good enough doing this or that. And if you were sick, you had to come into the office, show that you're really unwell, and be sent home, because otherwise they didn't believe that you were sick. It's changed now, but it was really, really harsh. And if that's your experience, and all of our experiences shape our personality because they shape our beliefs, and then our beliefs become the reality that we create, that could be a reason sometimes where people are finding it hard to show empathy, especially if they're a manager and they run their business, they run their team like that. They can learn not to show empathy. And then there are others who have yet to understand their emotions. They don't have that emotional awareness. And so because they don't know how they feel, they can't describe their feelings. They don't take time to tune into their emotions. They kind of block them. Sometimes just block them mentally. Sometimes block them with habits to kind of get rid of them. Then they can't really show empathy for others if they're not really in tune with their own feelings. They may find it difficult when other people talk about feelings because they can't relate, because they've blocked or pushed down their feelings. They may be numb, and that can often be a reason why as well, that I help people to break. And then there are people who are extremely detached. They go through life seeing things as black and white. There's no shades of grey. They're practical, logical and rational. They're upfront, often without thinking about it. They've created an identity around it. This is who I am. I'm blunt. I tell the truth. And they detach their emotions. So it's going to be hard for a person that has that belief, an identity about themselves, to show empathy unless they decide to change. And then there's people who can't really show empathy for other people at certain periods of time because of what they're going through themselves. If they're really in a hard place, if they're going through extreme financial stress, career, work stress, if they're going through anxiety, depression, other behaviours that are consuming their mind, their body, them as a whole completely, they're going to be so in their own world, it's going to be difficult for them to show empathy. So sometimes it's not how a person naturally is, it's just what they're going through in life at the moment, and it's important to help them as well. But what happens